Hey everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today we will be continuing our series called Viridian. The creator of this what if is Silver, a mist anime lover or know as KR Stark Tower. If you like the video, make sure to like, subscribe and share the video with your friends. Now on to the what if. Chapter 17, the answers we seek. Izuku paced in the little camper he called home. Kigo was eyeing him. The winged hero was still smattered here and there with bandages from his release from the hospital the day before. Most importantly, today was Saturday, the day of the meeting where he'd reveal himself as a time-traveling 44-year-old man who also happened to be their 15-year-old student and the vigilante-turned hero that the world seemed to have their eye on. He was understandably a little nervous. They'd either believe him and help out, or he'd be wishing he could undo whatever it was he was about to do when they laughed him out of the room and called the Happy Farm. He clenched the necklace. Relax, Zukin. I'm here with you. Besides, you're bringing along more than just the necklace. Kigo placed a hand on his shoulder. No need to pace a hole in this place, it's barely holding together. As is. Hey. My house is perfectly. He paused a moment to slam the panel back onto the wall where it popped out. Stable, thank you. Kigo gave him a flat look. Okay, so it's a work in progress. But it's livable. Livable and safe to live in are two very different things, my brother. It hasn't given me tetanus yet, the yet shouldn't even be there. Kigo groaned. I swear, if you don't move in with me, I'm going to tell UA today and make them build a dorm system. Mom, no. Mom, yes. Kigo crossed his arms. But UA will take away my sake. Izuku cried. You still have that. No alcohol until you're legal. I am legal. Izuku stuck out his tongue. Not in this timeline, you aren't. Fine, whatever. Izuku huffed, making a mental note to hide several alcohol bottles in various locations around town, and UA, so Kigo didn't take them away. Don't stress. If they don't believe you, we've still got Hanabi. Kigo reminded him. Hanabi was an acquaintance of Kigo's that owed him a favor. She had the most curious quirk, memory lane. She could pull other people into someone's memory and make them all relive it in third person, as spectators. Izuku was itching to analyze it. Especially since it worked in spite of memory-altering quirks. She was a mental specialist who often worked with police. Her quirk would work accurately even on someone who'd been memory-altered or had their memories suppressed. He wanted to know the specifics, but he had yet to meet the girl in question. He hoped he wouldn't have to. That was an absolute last-ditch option. He didn't want to traumatize everyone, after all. Or re-traumatize them. Whatever. Either way, the issue now was how to go about this. Izuku likely already suspected him of at least knowing Viridian, if not pulling the same conclusion as Todoroki about him being related to himself, and he was right. Kigo laughed his ass off when Izuku told him about Todoroki's accusation. He looked down when his phone buzzed. Call him paranoid, but he slipped a tracker into Izuku, Tsukachi, and Kigo's hero phones, or work phone in Tsukachi's case, something that they took with them everywhere. That way, no matter what, he could find them if they got into trouble. And Izuku was on the move. But he was heading away from UA. Izuku's brows furrowed. That wasn't right. Where was he? Dadzawa, Viridian, I was going to ask you to pick Midoriya up, but I'll do it myself. I want to give him a home check. I know you said he's safe at home, but I need to make sure. I think we've already established that you don't always recognize quirkless discrimination as such. Oh, shit. Kigo. He looked at his brother. How fast do you think we could fly to my mother's house? I'd say about 10 minutes or less. Why? Kigo shot him a suspicious look. Izuku showed him the phone. Because Izuku's en route to what he thinks is my house. And Inko really doesn't want to see me, I'm sure. Crap. Hold on, Zukin. Kigo shook out his wings as they ran outside. Izuku made sure to grab his things. Well, that's one cat out of the bag. Shouta didn't know what he was expecting when he knocked on the door of the Midoriya residence. The woman that stood before him bore a striking resemblance to his problem child. She had a thin physique with long green hair and shimmering green eyes. Hello. She tilted her head, confused. Hi, I'm Izuku Shouta, your son's homeroom teacher. He answered, but the woman looked even more confused. My son. There was a flash of, was that confusion in her eyes? Had Midoriya not informed her of his attendance at UA? He really hoped he hadn't just fucked up and made a possible abusive situation worse. Shouta was about to say something, when footsteps echoed on the concrete stairs leading up to the apartment. He turned to see his problem child panting lightly. The kid stopped when he saw his mother in the doorway. Enko. Midoriya started. The woman looked at him for a moment, as if she didn't recognize him. Oh, Izuku. I'm sorry I haven't been home much lately. Goodness, I never even asked which high school you got into. She smiled softly at him, but something was definitely wrong here. Midoriya snorted. I got into U.A.'s hero course. Come, now. Don't lie, especially in front of a guest. We both know your condition. Condition? Does she mean his quirklessness? Shouta felt anger spark up within him. My name is Izawa Shouta, a teacher at UA. Your son is my student. I teach a heroics. He stepped in, noting with a small amount of smug satisfaction as the woman jolted at the information. UA's? But, he's quirkless? Heroics is far too dangerous for someone like him. She protested. Something about her tone made it seem forced. Like her worry wasn't genuine. Don't even pretend to care. Midoriya shook his head. You're a terrible mother, you know that. Shouta jolted it. The steel in his student's voice. The woman apparently hadn't expected it, either. Listen here, Izuku. I am your mother, and you will not disrespect me that way. What kind of mother doesn't even notice that her son's been gone for over a year? Midoriya spat, glaring. There was a disappointment coloring his tone. I mean, I knew you didn't care, but this is a new low. I thought you'd at least notice. Shouta's head spun at this new information. This was looking to be a case of severe neglect. And, had Midoriya run away? Where was he staying? And why the hell hadn't Viridian told them? Midoriya eyed Shouta nervously for a moment. Don't lie, I made your favorite just last night for dinner. Oh, did you, now? Do you even remember what my favorite meal is? Of course I do, I'm your mother. It's katsudon. It hasn't been katsudon since I was 7. Midoriya sighed. Look, just, don't even bother, anymore. Not that you did to begin with. The boy gave his mother the most exhausted look Shouta's ever seen on a child's face. It was weary and filled with a sense of resignation. You know, I think some part of me still held out hope, that maybe you really did care about a quirkless kid like me. But it looks like I was wrong. Again. Shouta could sense the finality in his student's tone, and gently placed a hand on his shoulder. He looked back at the woman in the doorframe as he guided his student away. She looked like she'd been slapped, but there was something in her eyes. Maybe there was something else at play, here. Either way, he was going to file a case against her with Tsukachi for child neglect, but for now he had some more pressing matters. Once they were away from the complex, he looked at his student. You ran away. Around the beginning of my 3rd year of middle school. And you're staying. The kid sighed. I guess there's no way around it, is there? No. Dagaba Beach Park. Shouta stopped short. The dump. Even Viridian should have known that was wrong, quirkless, or not. So why hadn't he told them? Unless Viridian really was Midoriya's father. In that case, were they both living at the dump? I'll have you know that you can salvage a lot in that place. His problem child huffed. But wait, hadn't Hawks said that he'd spent time at Midoriya's place? If you're wondering about Hawks, I asked him not to tell anyone. I have my reasons, okay? I've got some powerful enemies after me, and I can't put him in danger by staying with him. More powerful than the League of Villains. Midoriya snorted. I'm sure it'll make sense after this meeting. The meeting? Shouta would be lying if he said he wasn't beyond curious. Even Principal Nizu hadn't been able to figure out the mystery that was the child walking beside him, which was moderately terrifying. He wondered just how much of a headache he'd have by the end of this. They rode the early morning train in silence. Midoriya was staring into his phone, but he hadn't scrolled for several minutes. The kid was understandably nervous, and likely shaken from their earlier encounter with his mother. Listen, Midoriya. He spoke up softly, and those bright green eyes turned to him. No matter what happens at this meeting, know that I'm in your corner, okay? I'll be here for you. If you believe me. Xiaoda would never admit it aloud, but the kid's lack of faith in him hurt. I will believe you. I promise. He found himself locked into a staring contest. He felt exposed, like Midoriya was judging his soul, determining his worth. It was unnerving, to say the least. I really hope you do, Xiao. His eyes were somewhat glassy and unfocused, but not quite in a flashback sort of way. It was as if he was remembering something. Xiaoda was so caught up in the mystery that was his student that he nearly missed their stop. This is us, problem child. He gently ruffled the kid's hair, earning a surprised smile from the boy. Midoriya quickly followed after him as they entered UA, heading straight for Nizu's office. Midoriya stopped him right outside of the principal's door. Sensei? I need to use the restroom. I'll be right back. Xiaoda almost stopped him, but remembered how defeated the kid had looked after speaking to his mother. He probably needed a bit of time to process that before delving into his trauma. He sighed. Fine, but make it quick. He entered the office alone. The principal was already there, enjoying a cup of tea with Tsukachi and Hawks, though Viridian was nowhere to be seen. He twitched. Damn it, why was that man always late? Midoriya will be joining us shortly, he's using the restroom first. Xiaoda explained before anyone could ask. Hawks chuckled lightly to himself, but Xiaoda didn't get the chance to ask him about it as Viridian walked in. Hey. R.I. Hawks greeted casually. Kigo Viridian grinned as he came over and clasped hands with the hero. Well, looked like those two were on friendly terms. They'd probably met on patrol or something. The two did seem to have similar personalities, and if Viridian was related to Midoriya, then it would stand to reason that the two would be close. Ah, Viridian, I presume. Nizu smiled. Would you like some tea? Principal Nizu. Viridian greeted. And present Mike. Yes, I'd love a cup of tea, thank you. Ah, good. The principal handed Viridian a cup. We're just waiting on Midoriya, now. Hawks chuckled lowly, but masked it as a cough. Viridian sent him a glare. Before we start, I have something I need to tell you. Midoriya will still be a little bit. Viridian said. Had he spoken to the kid beforehand? If Viridian had something to say and he didn't want the kid to know, then it'd stand to reason that he'd have the kid make up some kind of excuse to leave, and as a teacher, Xiaoda's heard the restroom excuse more times than should be legal. Oh. Nizu tilted his head. I promise, it's related to our reason for being here today. What, have we finally graduated to tragic backstory or something? Xiaoda rolled his eyes. He normally wasn't one to joke, but Viridian had a similar sense of humor. He supposed it was okay to joke with his friend. Actually, yes. Tsukachi choked on his coffee as Viridian calmly took a sip of tea, pulling his mask back down before speaking again. And your origins relate to Midoriya's trauma in what way? Nizu narrowed his gaze. Suspicious. In every way. Viridian answered. But my story is unbelievable. I know it's going to sound insane, but I need you to trust me. There was something in his eyes. A desperation. The sort of soul-crushing agony that drove men to madness. A loneliness that was so sharp and a grief so strong that Xiaoda's heart hurt just seeing it in his friend's eyes. You're our friend, Viridian. Tsukachi spoke up. We trust you. Of course we'll believe you. Xiaoda nodded in agreement. Nizu and Hisashi stayed quiet, but he could sense their curiosity. You already know my answer. Hawks smirked. So. Here's the thing. I'm actually from the future. There was a pause. Surely he must be joking, right? Viridian did that a lot. But there was a look in his eyes and a shock that was painted all over Tsukachi's face that told him he was telling the truth. Viridian pulled out a carefully bound stack of papers. They looked old and handed them to Nizu. Those are the blueprints for Project Hope, the time machine I built alongside Aizawa Xiaoda, my good friend. Xiaoda jolted at the sound of his name. Me. Yeah, you. Well, future you. He sighed deeply. The plan was for Xiao and I to jump back together, but he died protecting me, died to send me back. Hisashi's hand took his, and Shouta looked at Viridian in a whole new light. This man had once been his friend, and he'd died to send him to the past, but why? Why was that necessary? I'm afraid that I'm still missing some information. Nizu noted as he flipped through the pages. This is certainly feasible given the materials and calculations, but I fail to see why this was necessary. There was a sort of sharpness to the principal's gaze. Altering time for the wrong reasons is technically illegal, though it's never been done on this sort of scale before. 10 years. 28, actually. Viridian admitted. The room jolted. Even the handful of time-related quirks that VE popped up over the years. Nothing of this scale has ever been. Tsukachi trailed off, blinking owlishly at the vigilante. If it's illegal, then you can arrest me after I kill Shigaraki Tamura. But I have to prevent the future I came from. His fist tightened. Is this personal? Or is the greater populace at risk? Depending on the situation, it may be legal. Tsukachi spoke up. Shigaraki Tamura will bring an end to the world as we know it. Cities razed to the ground, billions, perhaps more, dead. I've seen so many horrible things. The apocalypse. Hisashi choked. Yeah. Viridian nodded. I've already changed up a few things, but until he dies, that future is still there. Until I can kill him and prevent him from receiving All for One, that future will remain. All for One, the name of a shadow villain. Who ruled the underworld? If the rumors Shouta had heard about him were correct, he was the villain equivalent of All Might, truly a terrifying prospect. All for One. Tsukachi blinked before his gaze narrowed. So he is alive. Yes, but the real threat is his protege Shigaraki Tamura. He may seem like a childish gamer, and he is, right now, but he's frighteningly intelligent. Viridian shuddered. Hard. He created these Noma that have special attributes. Things like speed, strength, flight. They eventually grew into their own species and gained an animalistic sentience. They'd attack any humans they came across. I can count on one hand how many survivor groups I ran across, even after. He winced. So let me get this straight. Tsukachi took a deep, calming breath. Shouten knew the feeling. This was a lot of information. You've come from 20-something years in the future to kill the man who will one day destroy the world, causing the deaths of countless people. He paused. Do I have that right? Yep. Pretty much. Viridian nodded. I know it's unbelievable, but I've got proof. Shouta blinked at that. Proof would be nice, because right now it just sounded like some kind of fucked up fairytale. Shao gave it to me. Said it'd convince you. Viridian lifted his mask a bit and reached down his shirt enough to pull up a necklace. It actually looked a lot like Midoriya's. Nizu's eyes widened as something clicked into place, and Shouta was somewhat terrified, because he'd never seen Nizu look shocked before. I see. Nizu chuckled to himself for a moment, before dissolving into full-on cackles. Ah, you took my fun away. Viridian pouted. Relax, R.I. Everyone else is still confused. Hawks chuckled. So the winged hero had already known all this. He felt a little miffed that this other hero was trusted before himself and Tsukachi. He ignored Nizu, who was starting to calm down, as he took the proffered necklace. It was only then that he saw what sat on the other end of that chain. His hand went to his own necklace, hidden beneath his shirt. Two rings sat together, one with a deep purple stone and the other with a bright shining green one. Forever in Harmony was engraved along the inside as Celtic-like knots intertwined with one another around the outside of the band. The one with the purple stone was encrusted with dried blood, and it looked a little worse for wear when compared to the other one. Neither looked to have been cleaned in a long time. Hisashi gasped beside him. That's our wedding bands. They both raised their gazes to Viridian. That's right. He smiled softly. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you, back then. But I swear I'll protect you, now. Shouta reluctantly handed the rings back to the vigilante turned hero, who took them gently with a soft look. He rubbed his thumb along Hisashi's with a forlorn gaze. Hasn't Midoriya been taking a while? Tsukachi spoke up suddenly. I mean, I know this was a lot of information, very important information, mind you, but weren't we originally here for the kid? Oh, yeah. That was right. But now, something new started to slide into place in his mind. Midoriya called them Zishi and Shao, and he was far more skilled in combat than normal. He took down a Noma without a second glance, and mentioned them during the battle trials before he'd even seen the one at USJ. Midoriya had had previous encounters with the Noma, but refused to tell them where or when. He didn't socialize well with his peers, though that was slowly changing between Hatsum and Shinsuan was always on edge. He had severe PTSD and seemed to be after Shigaraki Tamura. The puzzle pieces had been there all along, but he'd never thought to put them together like this before. His eyes widened as Viridian reached for his mask. Oh, yeah, about that. He slipped off the mask, and at first Shouta couldn't process what he was seeing. Fluffy green hair and bright green eyes, framed by a familiar smattering of freckles. The scar from Shigaraki was what really cemented this as reality. With a shuddering breath, Shouta clicked the final puzzle piece into place. Midoriya Izuku smirked. I fixed the W key. Chapter 18, Doors of Opportunity. It had taken 30 minutes for the situation to fully settle with the room's occupants. Naomesa's head still felt like it was spinning. He was sure that Aizawa was in no better state. Viridian, their good friend, co-worker, and informant, was just a child. Or, appeared to be a child. A child who apparently was mentally a fully aged adult who'd survived the apocalypse. So, yeah. Sorry about not telling you guys sooner, but it is a sort of wild tale. Midoriya shifted uneasily in his chair. You do believe me, don't you? Naomesa sighed, rubbing his temples. You've never led us wrong before. Viridian's been nothing but honest, and Midoriya is no different. He finally said, and the kid not a kid let out a breath. Hawks chuckled lowly. See? I told you that they'd believe you. Aizawa still looked rather shell-shocked, but was recovering admirably quickly. Honestly, problem child. You didn't need to stress over this for several weeks. Was saying it really that difficult? Yes. Midoriya gave him a flat look, one that they were far too familiar with from Viridian. What was I supposed to do if you didn't believe me? I'd have to drop off the map. And that'd just make finding Shigaraki all the more difficult. He huffed, crossing his arms. Oh, Can I keep my license? You know, as Viridian. You've earned that license fairly. Naomesa sighed. There's technically no age requirement for being a licensed hero, though most people won't hand it out to a kid. But since you've already got one, it's perfectly viable. There's no reason for anyone to take it away. Midoriya looked ready to cry in relief. That does beg more questions, though. Nizu spoke up. You mentioned the apocalypse, caused by Shigaraki via these Noma. Is there any chance of him slipping back to this time like you did? No. Midoriya answered instantly, expression abruptly serious. It was surreal. There was no doubt in his mind that this was Viridian that he was looking at, now not Midoriya the student. He certainly looked like an adult, with those shadowed eyes. When Shao and I built Project Hope, we also built in a self-destruct mechanism. We were nearly finished with the timer-based one, but his eyes unfocused for a brief moment, his tone became a little airy. Shigaraki found us first. If we'd had one more day, then Shao would have been able to jump back here with me, like we planned. Instead, he ended up staying behind, to destroy it so Shigaraki couldn't follow me. Truth, and you took all the notes with you? Nizu asked, holding up the file Viridian had given him earlier. That's the only copy. The only way Shigaraki could find his way here is if he either has a quirk that he can use to do so, or if he somehow finds someone who worked on Project Hope initially. The place was littered with skeletons when Shao and I found it, so I doubt that anyone working on it is alive. Truth, all right, would you mind explaining a bit more about this future? When did this apocalypse start? Naomesa asked, slipping into his work persona. Midoriya seemed to relax at this, and an easy smirk lit up his face. Naomesa could sense a shift in his aura, that it was more his Viridian side than his student side. It put Naomesa a bit more at ease, too. Let's see. I was 33 when the world ended, but the way he went about it had to have taken a year or two to create at least. So, what? 18 years from now. Aizawa hummed and Viridian nodded. How did he go about this? Nizu leaned forward, tail twitching. He created a virus of sorts. There were two strains. The first strain hit when I was 32. It killed millions of people worldwide and spread unbelievably fast. Whole nations closed down borders and went into a full shutdown. Cities were quarantined. It was kind of scary. A worldwide pandemic. I have no way of knowing if this first strand was created by Shigaraki or if it was completely natural. Either way, it did a fair bit of damage. Truth, that is disconcerting. Hawks frowned. You didn't tell me that. What could we do about it? First thing is to kill Shigaraki. If the first strand still hits, then we'll know it's natural and let it be. I'm here to prevent the end of the world, not the pandemic. Nature has its shit for a reason. Midoriya shook his head before continuing. The second strain is the really scary one. It turned people into Noma. My guess is that it somehow forced another quirk onto them through the virus. Typically, the person died and then zombified into a Noma thereafter. These Noma were capable of breeding, and that's how the whole ecology of the Noma from my time started. Truth, it sounds like a horror movie. Yamada winced. Believe me, it was surreal. Midoriya shuddered. Blue Noma lived in water, polluting whatever water source they lived in. Anyone who drank the water without boiling it would fall ill and likely die. And if they died with that water in their system, they'd become a blue Noma, as well. They also typically drowned their victims. I lost a brother that way. Truth. Naomasa rubbed his temples. This was a gigantic disastrous mess. Is there any chance of these Noma following you? Not that I'm aware of. He frowned as he glanced down at his wrist. Naomasa saw a strange brand there. When I jumped back, I retained my scars and any belongings I had on me at the time. His eyes unfocused for a long moment before he shook himself out of it. At any rate, that's the basics of it. I'm from the future, became a vigilante like I did in the first run. How I refer to my original timeline to try to find Shigaraki sooner, and became a student here at UA to keep in constant contact with the League. Wouldn't it be easier to be a full-time vigilante? Nizu tilted his head. Why waste your time as a student? Not that I'm not pleased to have you as one, mind. I knew Shigaraki was going to attack the USJ. It was such a massive incident, especially since it ended in the death of Azui in my timeline, that nobody could stop talking about it. Shao said as such when we were making plans, too. It was my best shot at killing Shigaraki, but I totally failed. He glared at the ground for a moment. So my next best chance will be to either find him, or let him find me. Which is why you made yourself out to be his aggressor during the USJ. Aizawa groaned. You wanted him to take an interest in you. Precisely. Midoriya grinned. If his focus was on me, then it wouldn't be on the rest of the class. I vaguely recall some student being kidnapped at some point, and if that student is me, then that'd be ideal. It'd give me the perfect chance to kill him, and in self-defense. I don't think I've ever had anyone plan a murder using a viable self-defense guise. Naomasa shook his head. I mean, like I said, you're free to arrest me after I kill the bastard, but you've gotta wait until after I kill him. Like we could catch you anyways. Aizawa huffed, and Midoriya laughed. Nizu hummed to himself and thought as a grin lit up his face. You know, Midoriya, you are an excellent vigilante. And an equally remarkable hero. Beyond that, I feel that your current classes are not up to par with what you require, especially as a practicing hero. Oh, okay. Midoriya raised an eyebrow. You're already my personal student. So it wouldn't garner much more attention to move you to private lessons of your own. I suppose you could say. Class 1S. That's a thing. Yamada blinked in surprise. It can be if I want it to be. Nizu grinned. Moreover, it'd give us the rare opportunity to ask Viridian, one of the most well-known and popular heroes these days, to help out at UA as a teacher's aide. You're offering me a job. Midoriya choked, and Aizawa coughed a bit, too. If you'd like. Nizu sat back in his chair, sipping at his tea. From what I understand, you don't really have any viable living arrangements. UA staff are offered room and board if they would like. So nobody would bat an eye at Viridian staying here. What do you mean, no viable living arrangements? Viridian, sir. Naomasa resisted the urge to smack his forehead as Midoriya cackled. We asked you to watch yourself. Aizawa groaned. I told you their reactions would be great. Midoriya laughed as he playfully shoved Hawk's shoulder. Wait, so how did you two meet? Yamada asked, looking between the number 3 hero and the number 1 vigilante. Well, I was attacked by Stain, and K stumbled across me and saved my life. Truth. Naomasa felt his stomach drop. Viridian had been attacked and nearly killed by Stain. He recalled the horror and fear he'd felt when he realized how close they'd come to losing a good friend. But now, realizing that Viridian was just a boy, it was a whole new level of horrifying. Judging by the pale complexion of Aizawa, the underground hero was coming to the same realization. Didn't you have a recent run-in with Stain? Aizawa asked Hawks, likely in an attempt to distract himself. Yeah, Zukin told me he was going to attack Ingenium, and since he was busy at the sports festival, I went to protect him instead. You knew, then? Yamada blinked. Yeah. Ingenium ended up paralyzed from the waist down in the first run. I was able to prevent that this go-around, but I'm not sure if I've prevented the second bit. Midoriya frowned and muttered lightly to himself. Prevent what? Naomasa asked, urging the boy to continue. Well, in the first run, after Itza-tensei was paralyzed, Itza-tenya from my class took it really hard. He turned in Hosu in an attempt to find the hero killer. And Stain killed him alongside pro-hero native. Great, more of my students are in danger. Aizawa sighed. Your class was known as the Cursed Class 1, in my timeline. Midoriya shrugged, making the Erasure hero groan. I think you're breaking my husband. Yamada spoke up. Zukin's good at breaking people's brains. Hawks nodded in agreement. Should have seen how he revealed his age to me. Just ripped off his mask and was all. You can't sponsor me because I'm only 15, and I'm taking the hero exam for UA in a month, or something like that. I just about choked on my lemonade. No, you nearly choked on your lemonade when I asked you to sign a permission slip. You walked in asking me to be your mother. How was I supposed to react? I don't know. I don't do social interactions. Quirkless, remember. I'll update the registry with your civilian identification. Naomasa sighed. If someone starts giving you trouble, that'll make your hero license valid in your civilian dress, too. Not to mention the benefits Eraser and I already explained to you. But it'll remain confidential information until you decide otherwise. Sweet. Midoriya cheered. I take it to mean you're accepting my offer of employment. Nizu asked, and Naomasa abruptly realized they'd gotten way off topic. I don't see why not. Assuming you're okay with hiring a 15-year-old. The only stipulation is that you'll have to tell the staff of your identity. Nizu nodded. Even All Might had to do the same. That's fair. It'll be quite a bit of worry off their backs, too, I think. Midoriya tilted his head thoughtfully. By the way, I meant to thank you for that emergency pager you gave me. I managed to replicate it for use as Viridian. Did you, now? Nizu leaned forward, intrigued. Yeah. I wanted a faster way to let Kigo know if I was in trouble or for him to let me know if he was in trouble, so I thought the pager was the perfect answer. Speaking of. Aizawa started, shooting a mild glare towards the vigilante. When were you planning on telling us you were living in a dump? I'm sorry, did you say dump? Naomasa blinked. Had Viridian been homeless this entire time? I don't know. Midoriya shrugged. If I had things my way, I'd stay there indefinitely. You get used to the smell after a while, and the nearby laundromats are way too easy to hack. Plus the regular street guys know me, and they know better than to mess with me. You just like living on your own. Hawks rolled his eyes. I mean, that too. Right. Aizawa, Hawks, perhaps you two would like to go help Midoriya gather his things and move them into the staff dorms. I'll prepare the staff meeting in the meantime. Nizu spoke up. Unless there's more to say. He looked at Midoriya for a moment. Nothing pressing that I can think of. But do you want me to explain the whole time travel bit to the rest of the staff? I'll take care of that. I fear they may not approve of you being their co-worker otherwise. Nizu nodded. One more thing. Midoriya said, as if suddenly remembering something. I realized when Shigaraki disintegrated the door to UA. He didn't come inside. That means he likely has a spy in UA. I feared as such, hence why my first instinct Was to look at me. Midoriya nodded. It's logical, I already knew about the Nomua, and I was prepared for the USJ attack. I've been keeping an eye out for any possible spies. If it were a staff member, they wouldn't need to create a distraction like that to get to the papers on the trip. It has to be a student. My thoughts exactly. Come on, problem child, Aizawa said, and Midoriya perked up at the nickname. We need to gather your things. Right. He slipped his Viridian mask back on, and Naomasa marveled at the stark difference such a small thing seemed to make. He realized that the man they knew as Viridian was likely much closer to his actual self than the child he masqueraded as. In all truth, Viridian was the real Midoriya. At this point, and the student was the mask. This thought made him simultaneously sad and happy. Sad, because what a shame that he could never truly feel himself in his own skin, but happy because that meant that he and Aizawa knew the real him. They were still friends before all else. Hey, Viridian. Naomasa called out before the other got too far away. The boy turned to look at him, a questioning gleam to his eye. Stay out of trouble, yeah? And next time you get hurt, because I know there'll be a next time, go to a damn hospital. You literally have no excuses, now. Haha. Viridian laughed jovially. If you can catch me, Masa. Yeah, maybe things were okay like this. Izuku hummed idly as he led Aizawa to the edge of the dump where he lived. It was freeing in a sense. Aizawa, Naomasa, Yamada, and Nizu all knew who he was now. They knew the truth, and it was beyond relieving. He felt like he could take on a whole pack of Royal Nomua. He was light as a feather. Someone's in a good mood. Kigo smirked. I'm just happy that everything's out in the open now. You were anxious over nothing. Aizawa shook his head with a sigh as Izuku led them through the very specific, highly booby-trapped path. Oh, don't step there, you'll topple half that mountain. Follow my steps exactly. Zukin's got this place armed with all kinds of nasty surprises. Kigo informed Aizawa, who'd been about to make a wrong step. You've got this place rigged. Well, yeah. What do you expect? A place like this is prime real estate to a street rat. Izuku chuckled as they finally came out into the clearing. Aizawa blinked in surprise. Not bad, huh? Kigo smirked. I wasn't expecting anything like this either. I practically drowned this area in bleach. Nothing here will hurt or kill you unless you fail to use common sense. Izuku shook his head as he removed his mask again. It was easier to breathe without it, after all. The fire pit had 2 old lawn chairs stuck into the sand, and the camper was set just off behind that. Tide never comes up this high, so everything stays nice and dry. And the mounds of trash keep the wind out so nothing blows away, either. I secured the heavier objects in the immediate vicinity so nothing would fall so long as someone doesn't try to land from the air. Izuku sent Kigo a look. How was I supposed to know you had the place rigged against airborne intruders? Why wouldn't I? You're way too paranoid. It's not paranoia if they're really out to get you. Izuku countered, and Aizawa sighed. Let's just get this over with. He crinkled his nose. All right. Izuku led them inside, where the air purifier he'd obtained made the camper smell perfectly acceptable. Can I get you 2 some food first? Like you can cook? Kigo laughed. No, but I can reheat the dinner you made the other night. Izuku smirked. I'd really rather just be done with this. Izuku rolled his eyes but started packing up his stuff nonetheless. It was a bit harder than he'd expected, leaving the camper. It'd become his home. There were memories in that place. The first time he'd revealed his identity to Kigo, when he finally got his hero's license and couldn't do anything but stare at it all night long, that one time he'd woken up from a nightmare and Kigo was there, his UA acceptance letter. Nearly all the positive memories he'd had in this time happened here. It was home. An admittedly shitty home, but home nonetheless. Some part of Izuku didn't want to leave. He looked up at Kigo when he put a hand on his shoulder. It'll be alright, Zukin. We'll make new memories in your new home. I'm going to miss this one, though. He admitted. And that's okay. Izuku reached into his pocket and pulled out a key. He unlocked the cabinet where he kept his future stuff. He pulled out the old clothing he'd jumped back in. Both Aizawa and Kigo eyed the blood-stained article with confusion and concern, but Izuku packed it away without an explanation. He grabbed his old rucksack still packed with his supplies and then grabbed the last thing left. What's that? Kigo asked, gesturing to the picture frame in Izuku's hands. One of my most treasured memories. He turned the photo so the other two could see. Shouta, hair speckled with gray, stood next to an adult Izuku as Hisashi had an arm flung around the both of them. Izuku was still much shorter than the other two, and had a bit of stubble growing on his chin, but his hair was long and he looked exhausted. Nemuri stood on Izuku's other side, ruffling his hair. Power Loader stood in the background, smiling fondly beside Dabi, Fat Gum, and Tamaki. Everyone looked mildly dirty and some of their clothing had blood stains. A few of them were bandaged here and there. We'd found an old camera, you know, the kind that print the photos immediately. It's the only photo I have of my family, Izuku admitted, and the two heroes in the room shared a solemn look. This was during the apocalypse, but we wanted something to remember the good times. Even then, we'd lost a lot of people. So just being able to remember the ones we had then. Isn't that? Izuku's gaze locked onto Tamaki. Yeah, from class 3, eh? And that's Dabi. He's a villain, but he's like a brother to me. He's not a villain quite yet in this timeline, or at least, not bad enough to be arrested. I want to save him first. You and your saving people thing. Kigo shook his head fondly. I made him a promise. I intend to keep it. Izuku looked at the photo with determination. That's Power Loader, isn't it? Izuku hummed. Yeah. Uncle Higuri, as he had me call him, taught me a lot about mechanics and inventions. We used to stay up all night until someone came and dragged us off to bed, usually Fat Gum or Zishi. He died fairly early on, just a few months after this photo was taken, actually. I'm sorry. Don't apologize. It wasn't your fault. It was mine. And he's alive now, and that's what matters. You are so talking to Hound Dog about this. Izuku sighed. Ha. Good luck with that. Kigo snorted. Zukin's stubborn to a fault. Don't I know it? The Erasure hero shook his head. Come on, now. We should get you moved in. Gay fanimboy at Moldybrochkly, did you hear? Moldybrockley, huh? Why'd you ping me at the ungodly hour of 11 in the morning? On a Saturday? The cake is a lie, it's like 6 in the evening here. Noiskerdili, that's United States. The cake is a lie, yep. I'm from California. Barbie I saw your Japanese is excellent. I never knew. The cake is a lie, thanks. My grandparents are from Japan. I have no name, it's late, cake. Gotob, the cake is a lie, nope. Demonic gay microwave, yes. Slep. The cake is a lie, I don't know what slep is, but I shall not sleep. Moldybrochkly, why did you wake me up? Demonic gay microwave, SLEP demonic gay microwave, Slezeep demonic gay microwave, sleep demonic gay microwave, sleep, the cake is a lie, I shall stay awake. Tongue sticking out, it is still early. It's not even midnight. Gay fanime boi, UA is getting a new teacher. Or, something like that. Nobody knows who, but someone saw someone moving into the teacher's dorms on UA. I have no name, really? That's cool. Also, cake slepepepepepepep. The cake is a lie, No. Moldybrochkly, wouldn't it be cool if it was Viridian? Demonic gay microwave, why is everything Viridian with you? Moldybrochkly, this is the cult of Viridian? Demonic gay microwave, fair point. Izuku sighed as he placed the last box down in the room. The teachers' dorms were, despite the name, more like small apartments. Each teacher had their own room with a bedroom, spare room, living room, kitchenette, full bathroom, and private balcony. There was a common lounge and even a communal hot springs. Even Kigo was impressed by the setup. Nizu certainly didn't do things by halves. Nobody had bothered them while they moved things into the room, not that there was much to move, as Nizu had already called the staff into a meeting to keep them out of the way. He looked down at his phone when it buzzed. Nizu, now that you've finished moving your stuff in, can you please join us in the staff meeting room for the proper explanation? I've prepped them a little, but I haven't told them who you are. Viridian Chaos, do I want to know how you managed to hack this chat? Or know precisely when we've finished moving things? Dadzawa, best to Just leave things be. Izuku made sure that his Viridian mask was firmly in place before heading over to the meeting room. The teachers looked up at him in surprise when he entered the room. And may I introduce our newest staff member Viridian? I'm sure you know of him. Nizu grinned. Of course. Who hasn't heard of the quirkless hero, Viridian? 13 sounded excited. I've been wanting to meet you for a while. Thanks. Am I really that well known? He blinked at Shouta in confusion. Yes, Viridian. You are. It's good to finally meet you instead of chasing your shadow. All Might in his hero form greeted him. Since you're going to be a new staff member, I believe you need to know something about me. If it's about your injury and 3-hour time limit, I already know. Viridian smirked as the man coughed up blood in surprise and deflated. How? I'm Viridian. Information is my strongest asset. He explained. Yes, well. Nizu says you'll be a specialty teaching assistant. Midnight inquired. That's right. Viridian grinned. But first, you need to know a few things about me. He raised an eyebrow at Nizu. I've already explained about your little time travel situation. Oh? How much? Enough. Nizu grinned. He told us that you were from the future and came back to prevent something catastrophic. That you were within your legal rights to mess with time. All Might explained. Oh, and if you didn't know, please call me Yagi Toshinori in this form. Right. Viridian nodded his head. Cool, so if you know that much, then I guess my identity is all that's left. He grinned as the room stiffened in anticipation. Just do it, problem child. Aizawa shook his head. Problem child. Midnight mouthed in confusion as Izuku lifted off his mask. Yo. He gave them a casual salute while he plopped down in a chair that he assumed was placed there for him. The staff blinked incredulously, and Aizawa heaved a massive sigh. Yamato was attempting to hold back a smirk. You really had to do it like that? His homeroom teacher asked. I mean, did you want me to drag it out? Because they already knew about the time travel bit, so. Wait, so you're Viridian? Vlad asked, pointing at Izuku. Yep. And technically somewhere in my 40s. He waited a moment for that to process. See, I came back in time to essentially prevent the end of the world as we know it, and found that information's a lot easier to come by as a vigilante. Yes, I'm quirkless, and yes I passed the entrance exams fair and square. He huffed. Did you study support items at all? Powerloader asked, leaning forward in interest. Yeah. I went to a specialized school and got a PhD in computer science. I made support items for a living. For a little bit, I even had the opportunity to work with you on a few things. Izuku smiled softly for a moment, recalling all those late nights he'd spent working on projects with Uncle Higuri. So you knew some of us. Midnight concluded. Yeah. I was closest to my Shouta and Hisashi, though. He glanced at Aizawa for a moment. Like I said, I came from a future I'll do everything to prevent. All things considered, I thought the position of a student was decidedly not ideal. As a fellow staff member, he will have more freedom to move about and do as he needs to prevent the coming dangers we face. Nizu hummed. That being said, having been his private teacher for several months, Midoriya has plenty of qualifications to be a teacher's aide. Well, if Nizu's given you the green light, then I see no reason why we shouldn't welcome you onto the team. Snipe chuckled. Welcome aboard, little sharpshooter. It'll be interesting to have such a youthful face around. I'll look forward to your valued input. Cementos smiled. Izuku smiled back as more staff members welcomed him aboard. Nobody seemed against him joining them, which was a welcome relief. After a lifetime of scrutiny and rejection, it was still a little shocking to find people who welcomed him even without a quirk. I hope you realize you're still going to attend our sessions. Hound Dog huffed. Though this does make a lot more sense. Sorry, I just couldn't find a way to explain it to you earlier. Izuku shrugged. I mean, I know I've got issues, but I couldn't risk getting kicked out of UA or missing the USJ incident. Is there anything else we need to be aware of? Nizu asked. Now that everyone's here. Other than the possibility of Itza getting himself killed? I think I remember the UA Heroics summer training camp being attacked. Don't quote me on that, though, That was decades ago. It could have been during a field trip or something. Come to think of it, though, Tsuragami told me that I could hold a police training camp this summer as Viridian. If I do it as a conjoined thing, then we'll already have backup on hand if the attack occurs. He tapped his chin as his mind started spinning out plans. And I vaguely recall a student being kidnapped at some point. I think it was Bakugo. Right. So even our summer camp isn't safe. Aizawa looked ready to bash his skull into the table. Izuku chuckled. Hey, don't worry so much. You've got me, so we'll be fine. I'll just attract all the trouble to me instead of your class. That's what he's afraid of. Yamada grinned. So you all moved into the dorm's little listener. Yep. Second floor room 22. Izuku nodded. Well, I think that's about all we've got for today. Nizu nodded. As of Monday, Midoriya will be listed as my personal student and intern. As such, he'll be pulled out of Class 1A's normal courses. Viridian will then be placed as a teacher's aide, particularly focusing on the heroics and support courses. Support. Power Loader raised an eyebrow. Yes. I thought it'd present an interesting challenge for your class to create support items for our newest hero. Nizu grinned and Izuku lit up. I get gear. Hold on. Aizawa narrowed his eyes. What kind of heroics gear do you have? Well, I got my vigilante outfit at a local Halloween store, and everything else I made from scraps I found at Dagaba. Oh. Kigo got me a hero phone after I wrecked it for the third time. Third time. Aizawa frowned. Yeah, I dropped it off a building and finally killed it. Izuku shrugged. Yeah, and you fell with it. Kigo glared. And you still refused a hospital? I'm sorry, did you just say you fell off a building? Midnight practically screeched. You get used to it. Aizawa sighed. If it helps, I didn't hit the ground. My phone just slipped out of my pocket. Yeah, but you dislocated your shoulder catching yourself on that streetlight. Kigo sighed. So the only actual hero level anything you have is a phone? Power Loader asked, a frown on his face. Yeah. Everything else is civilian level stuff I snitched from the dump and stuff. Izuku shrugged. I have no hero gear. So he's just that good. Midnight grinned. Able to outrun even All Might himself with nothing your average kid couldn't manage to get a hold of. Impressive. The number one hero sunk into his chair a bit more, and Izuku felt a wave of satisfaction. He may respect the number one hero for all the good he's done, but he had no respect for Yagi Toshinori, the man who crushed his dreams. He respected him as a hero, not necessarily a person. The knowledge that he had a quirk that could be passed on might have a little bit to do with that. Come on, listener. I'll give you a tour of the teacher's facilities so you've got a place to escape to. Yamada grinned. Oh, and here's your new staff ID, don't lose it. I'll have you keep a hold of your student ID for appearance's sake. Nizu grinned, handing him a staff ID that had a photo of his Viridian self with his hero name printed neatly next to it. Welcome to the team. Viridian's grin matched Nizu's and a few staff members shuddered. There's two of them now. Ectoplasm muttered to himself. What have we done? Snipe groaned. Something magnificent. Viridian cackled. Chapter 19, the new teacher shouted aside when Viridian joined him on the rooftop. It had only been a couple of days since they learned his true identity, and he now found himself wondering if the kid ever slept. You've got school tomorrow. So do you. Viridian chuckled. Remember our bet? You didn't guess my identity before I revealed it, so I get to keep doing exactly what I've been doing all along. He paused for a moment. Besides, I can handle patrols just fine so long as I'm not taking over your crappy patrol schedule on top of everything else. Shouta winced. When he'd asked Viridian to take his patrol schedule in the aftermath of USJ, he'd assumed the man had no day job. He certainly hadn't realized that he was a UA student. Fine. But do you know what you're going to do about internships? They'll be announced tomorrow. I was thinking of Midoriya interning with Viridian. Shouta stared at him, incredulous. You can't intern with yourself. He stated slowly, causing the vigilante-turned hero to laugh. Watch me. Problem child. He shook his head. This wasn't worth arguing about. Viridian would do what Viridian wanted. Nothing Shouta said or did would stop him when his mind was set to something. Are we doing this patrol or not? Come on. Viridian turned towards the south side. We'll start over here, tonight. He hummed in thought as they gracefully leapt from one rooftop to the next. If not me, then who do you recommend? I have to stay near Hosu in case something happens. Other than Itza, I get the feeling that something else happened. I can't remember what, though. Hopefully it's nothing important. Shouta grimaced. Knowing Viridian's luck, it was something major. It was still so strange to know that this person beside him was from the future. Legally, according to Nizu. Apparently there was actual paperwork for this sort of situation that Tsukachi could file, so if anyone ever found out about his breaking the time stream, he wouldn't get arrested for it. Go figure. What are they like? He found himself asking in the quiet hours of the night. They'd come to a rest at one of the rooftops of an abandoned crumbling building in the south side. Huh. Green eyes turned towards him with a questioning head tilt. The Noma from your time. Are they stronger than the one from USJ? That beast haunted Shouta's nightmares, even now. He could never forget the strength with which it snapped his arms and pounded his face into the concrete. He could still feel its phantom hand grinding his bones to dust, salvageable only by the grace of a single quirk from a nurse in the hospital he'd been taken to. Viridian hummed as he thought. In a sense. See, Shigeriki's Noma were varied and specialized. I'd say the Dark Noma would be the closest to the one from USJ. They're about as strong as that one, but they aren't nearly so fast, nor could they heal themselves. The fast ones are the White Noma. He shuddered hard, and Shouta wondered if he had specific trauma with those ones. They're so fast I once saw one catch up to someone with a speed quirk in seconds. That guy's stupidity is the only reason I'm here right now. It didn't feel real. To hold the knowledge was not the same as holding the memories. It felt more like a twisted story that Viridian told, and sometimes he had to remind himself that this horribly scarred child was actually a man who lived it. It's weird, isn't it? Viridian gave a low, humorless laugh. Some days, I actually miss it. I don't miss the apocalypse necessarily, but I miss the simplicity of it all. Survival. You're worth what you can contribute, and I for the first time in my life wasn't worthless. Nobody asked me about quirks or looked down on me when they realized I didn't have one. Because I could fight, I was valuable. You are valuable. Shouta put a hand on his shoulder. Help. Viridian. A distant cry had them both rushing off towards the sound. Shouta sighed. Tonight would be a long night. Izuku sighed as he went through the motions of class. It wasn't until their heroics period that things started to get interesting. He smirked as, just about 20 minutes beforehand, Izawa called him up and handed him a slip, saying Niza wanted to see him. With an internal snicker, he took the paper and headed over to the staff room, the actual locked staff room, not the one that was open for students to come and grab them at. Ah, Midoriya. That time, already. 13 mused as they moved their rook across the chessboard, making Midnight pout. Yep. He snickered as he pulled out his vigilante outfit. Since they already knew about his time travel escapades, he figured he didn't really need to hide. So he was quick to pull off his uniform and put on his much more comfortable vigilante clothing. The teachers in the room didn't comment, but he thought he saw All Might wince. You should talk to Power Loader after school today and have him help you design a new outfit. I think it goes without saying that we'd all feel better if you had more protection than a Halloween costume. 13 sighed. As they moved another piece. Check. I'm still no less impressed that you've managed with nothing more than civilian-level goods this entire time. Midnight laughed softly. It's astounding that you even managed to outrun All Might in his hero form. She moved another piece. Uncheck. That's not a thing. 13 huffed. I've always wondered, how did you manage to outrun All Might? Check. All Might himself perked up a bit, listening closely. It really wasn't that hard. I already knew about his 3-hour time limit from the first run, so all I actually needed to do was evade him for 3 hours. Viridian shrugged. Beyond that, I'm very good at staying hidden. White Nomu hunt by sound. I estimate they've got better hearing than All Might, so I didn't need to worry about him finding me that way. I know he doesn't have heightened smell, and his vision has nothing on a Nomu scout. Noma. Scout. Midnight blinked as she moved another piece. Uncheck. And yes, that's a thing. It is not. 13 scowled beneath their mask as they moved another piece. Check. Tiny Nomu about the size of a chicken. Perhaps they were small children that had turned initially, not really sure. They aren't very strong, and they're not nearly as fast as a white Nomu, but they've got sharp little teeth and travel in packs. They've got really sharp eyes. I swear they could find someone with a camouflage quirk. He shook his head. So anyways, I just needed to keep All Might on the trail I wanted him on while I sat back and watched the show. Amazing. I'm not sure I completely understand it, but I've never met anyone as good at disappearing as you. Midnight chuckled as she moved another piece. Checkmate. She proclaimed. Wait, what? 13 stood abruptly, scanning every inch of the chessboard before sitting back with a groan. You were leading me into a trap this whole time. A couple of the other teachers wandered in. Vlad King and Izawa were arguing about something under their breath as Yamada laughed. Anyways, that's very impressive. All Might grinned. Perhaps we should train together sometime. Perhaps we should. Viridian smiled as he pulled on his mask, making sure his voice modifier was turned on. All right, are the kiddies ready for me? I'll never get over that. Izawa shook his head with a fond smile. Yes, Heroics 1, is ready for Viridian. Wonderful. He grinned. You coming, Eraser? Yeah, just let me refill my thermos. He poured nearly the entire pot of coffee in his thermos before screwing the lid back on and following the vigilante-turned-hero out of the teacher's lounge. Got a lesson planned for today? You could say that. He grinned. I've already got things set up with Nizu. That isn't reassuring. Izawa took a nice long drink from his thermos, and Viridian idly wondered if he'd spiked it while he wasn't looking. Viridian grinned wider as they approached 1A. Izawa shot him a look that clearly said stay here, which he had little intentions of listening to. He had a plan, after all. Shinsu Hitachi wasn't sure what to think when Izawa of 1A stalked into his general education classroom. A quiet murmur swept through the room as Snipe nodded his head in greeting. Class, this is Izawa Shouta, homeroom teacher of Heroics Class 1A. Snipe introduced as the students perked up. Don't beat around the bush. Izawa glared at Snipe. Shinsu Hitachi, come with me. He turned to walk away as Shinsu jolted in. Shock. Was he in trouble? Had he done something wrong? He didn't waste any time gathering his supplies and dashing out of the room after the hero, ignoring the snickers of his classmates. Yes, sir. You're not in trouble. Izawa reassured him. Your performance at the sports festival was impressive. Enough so that you've been offered a spot in Heroics 1A. He almost stopped walking. He felt himself shake. Was this some kind of joke? Izawa's eyes flickered to him for a moment. Look, kid. I know you've been given the villain card your entire life. Trust me, so was I. I can erase people's quirks with a look. This isn't a joke or a prank. While you didn't get the chance to show off your quirk as much as you could have, you showed enough drive and ingenuity during the festival to warrant your transfer. Plus, we've got a couple of open spots. He gave a yawn. Open spots. I'll explain in a moment. He stated as they opened the doors. Shinsu eyed his new classmates. Everyone, this is Shinsu Hitachi. He's transferring into 1A as of today. Wait. Izawa-sensei. Kirishima spoke up, worry etched into his face. What about Midoriya? He's being transferred to Class 1S, a new course. He's now Nizu's private student, as he's been deemed a little overqualified for this class. Izawa explained. You'll still share some classes with him, but for the most part he'll be doing his own thing. Shinsu felt a jolt of disappointment that his friend wasn't going to be in his class, but he was overjoyed for Izuku. He couldn't remember ever hearing about Nizu taking on a private student. It was quite an honor. He took the seat that Izawa gestured to as his new. Classmates gave him smiles and waves. His new homeroom teacher didn't make him state his quirk, which was a new and welcomed change from every other homeroom teacher he'd had. I'm sure you've heard that UA has accepted a new staff member. Izawa stated once Shinsu was settled. He's going to be something like a teacher's aide or a co-teacher. He'll be directing your heroics class today. You can socialize while I go retrieve him. With that, Aizawa turned and left them in the room. A pink-skinned girl leaned over towards him with a grin. Nice to meet you. I'm Ashido Mina. My quirk is acid. Hitachi, wasn't it? Why yeah. He blinked as he was accosted with introductions and quirks. Everyone had such amazing quirks. Sure, he'd seen most of them in action at the sports festival, but it wasn't like he'd had the opportunity to sit back and watch. So you're Izuku's friend, huh? Bakugo gave him a cursory look. Bakugo Katsuki, I've known Izuku since we were born. Shinsu noticed that he was one of the few that didn't list his quirk. Not that he needed to, what with the finale of that sports festival. He sighed. There really wasn't a way around it, was there? My quirk is brainwashing. He glanced away for a moment before looking up at his classmates. To his surprise, they didn't look disgusted or horrified at all. What a remarkable quirk. Aiza grinned, making odd robotic chops with his hand. Perfect for hostage situations or destructive villains. You certainly won't need to worry about collateral damage as much as me. Ashido laughed. How does it work? Can you just it's response-based. If I ask a question and someone responds, I can, yeah. He felt his face heat up. Nobody had ever asked him how his quirk worked with such innocent curiosity before. Well, nobody but Izuku, but he was an outlier. Before anything more could be said, Aizawa returned. Now, as I was saying before, you'll have a new part-time teacher. He'll mainly be helping with heroics, but really, Eraser, you say you don't like to beat around the bush, but you can be awfully long-winded when you want to be. A voice spoke up from the window. Shinsu was sure it'd been closed just a moment ago, but now there was a figure calmly lounging on the windowsill as if they weren't several stories off the ground. The guy wore a dark green outfit like a ninja with a short sword and a black utility belt. Bright green eyes shone out from slits and Shinsu jolted when he recognized the rather plain mask. Why Yuri Viridian? Kirishima cried out in shock. Shinsu could feel the jolt of awe and disbelief travel throughout the room. Yep, we've got a winner. Viridian chuckled as he hopped down from the window. He was a fair amount shorter than Shinsu thought he'd be. Standing about even with or shorter than most of his class. Aizawa gave a fond huff as he rolled his eyes. This, as I'm sure you've already figured out, is Viridian. He'll be that new teacher I told you about. Yo. Good to meet ya. Viridian seemed to be grinning beneath that mask. Time's wasting. We're already 20 minutes into your class period. Since this is my first time teaching you all, let's see how you fare. He tossed a bunch of gym uniforms on the desk, earning a small glare from Aizawa. Put these on and meet me outside. Well, this sounds familiar. Kaminari sighed as everyone got up and started to grab their uniforms. Shinsu followed them out to the heroics gyms and changed into the uniform. He'd only worn it once or twice in general education just for basic stuff and the sports festival. Viridian was already waiting for them with a grin when they arrived. Come on, this way. He led them to an urban setup, much like the heroics entrance exams. Today, we'll be playing a game of tag. Albeit, and you all have to avoid me for as long as possible. You can use your quirks if you'd like, but don't expect me to go easy on you. For extra points, you can tag me. Aizawa spoke up. For the purpose of this exercise, the two of us will be wearing these power limiters. It adds half our body weight to us, which will slow us down significantly. Remember, if I touch you, you're out. Your grade will be directly proportionate to how long you're able to stay untagged. Tagging Aizawa will grant you 100 bonus points. He'll still remain in the game if he's tagged, just for fairness' sake. Viridian snickered. As if you believe in fairness. Aizawa shot him a glare. Hey, it's our job to prepare these kiddies for the real world. It won't be as nice as us. Viridian grinned, turning back to the class as Aizawa sighed and headed into the faux city. All right, you've got a 10-minute head start. You can go ahead and go in, now. It didn't take much more to motivate them all to start running. Viridian was known as one of the stealthiest people on the planet. He was so good at staying hidden that they had to give him a hero license because they just couldn't catch him. To top it off, the guy was quirkless. Just like Izuku was. Shinsu saw the guy as a true inspiration. Eraserhead was one of his favorite heroes, sure, but Viridian was the one he looked up to the most. Shinsu hid himself in the corner of a darkened room, near enough to a window to escape if he needed to, but far enough away from the door to not be caught off guard. He wasn't sure how long it'd been, but it didn't feel like long enough before a voice at the window startled him. "Nice hiding spot," Viridian complimented, causing Shinsu to whirl around and back away. "But next time, remember that your enemies could use the window, too. It's not just a way out, but a way in as well." Shinsu gave a nervous chuckle. "What gave me away?" Viridian just laughed and signed something with his hands. He must have quickly realized that Shinsu didn't understand him because he sighed with a shrug. In a flash, a moment far too fast for Shinsu to even comprehend, let alone dodge. Viridian had gotten behind him. A firm hand on his shoulder had him groaning. "Good attempt, but to someone who knows your quirk, it's a little obvious. I'd recommend getting a voice changer to mimic other people and see if you can get better responses that way." He gave Shinsu a smirk. "As for what gave you away, next time you try to hide in an abandoned building, try to disturb as little dust as possible. You left a bit of a trail up here. From there it was just jumping from one window to the next. Don't worry, you hid better than most of your classmates." Shinsu groaned as Viridian pointed him out of the city. He was more than a little surprised to see over half his class there. After another 10 minutes or so, another person, Azui, he thought her name was, joined them. "You too, Kuro? He found me hiding at the bottom of a stream. He's really good. Even with those limeters, we can't hope to outrun him, Kuro." She shook her head with a sigh. "He's so manly," Kirishima proclaimed. "You know, back when he was still just a vigilante, he saved my brother's life. He'd been kidnapped and Viridian saved him. We've both been dying to meet him ever since to thank him. He saved a good friend of mine, too." Yayorozu nodded. "From what I know, he's been working with Izawa-sensei for a while, now." "You've got that right," Viridian commented from where he was casually leaning against the entrance of the city. The final student coda, surprisingly enough, was trailing behind him. "You all did remarkably well considering you have no training in evasion. I believe all might has been concentrating on their fighting skills," Izawa informed as he rejoined the group. "You can't always fight your way out of a situation. And sometimes, you need to know how to sneak up on an enemy to deal the real damage. With me, you'll be primarily learning how to hide and evade, which is arguably just as important as knowing how to fight." Shinsu nodded. He could see those skills being invaluable in their chosen field. "For now, that just about wraps up today. Gather your things from the classroom and head home." Izawa gave another yawn. Wait. Kirishima approached Viridian before falling into a deep bow. "Last year, you saved my brother's life. He was one of those 30 kidnapped kids. He once said you even protected him from a bullet. I can't thank you enough for bringing my baby bro home." Viridian looked surprised for a long moment, as if he wasn't used to being thanked so profusely. His gaze softened into a smile. "I'm glad he's okay. Take good care of your family, yeah? And when you become a hero, make sure you reach a hand out to everyone you can." "Of course." Kirishima grinned, straightening up. "Come on, Eraser, let's head back." Viridian gave a yawn of his own. "I'd like a nap before our patrol tonight."